I'm kind of excited with the idea of engaging this trip, and trips are always wonderful journeys of exploration, and the good ones you don't know where you're going at some level, even if you have an itinerary or a destination. It's like going down a river, and I don't know what's around the next bend, or certainly 5 bends down the river. It's a destination unknown, and that's kind of, I only know what's right in front of me.
I think it's gonna be crazy and exciting and weird and scary. It won't hit me until I'm on the plane, getting ready to leave. So, even though I've been packing, I know it's real, I do cry and I think about all my friends and family and stuff. I never want to come back home early. I'd be ashamed of myself if I was to not make it, because I've always made it through anything. Everything that I've been through, I've always made it. I kind of don't feel like it's actually going to happen until it does, since I've been waiting so long.
Soon I'll be leaving a place I really love, but going to a place I want to be going to. And I'm kind of open for whatever's going to happen. I don't have plans yet. It's hard to leave your family, really, and leave your friends. Once I have to say goodbye, it'll be sad.
I really don't know what to expect. I'm going to learn to appreciate everything that I have a lot more. Not that I don't take what I have for granted, but it'll certainly give me new perspective on my outlook on life. When I'm packing my bags, I'll be a little sad, a little scared. It's a little scary not knowing when the next time I'll talk to my parents will be like.
I think the hardest part's gonna be when she leaves.
We were children of the 50s, so there was a quiet generation, weren't expected to do a whole lot other than what was expected of us. The woman in white gloves and all this kind of stuff.
Our aspiration seemed to be, never went beyond getting a bigger, better television or refrigerator or something like that. And I think maybe that was what I know inspired me to some extent to say there must be more to life than this, and there's a whole world out there.
We were really in the vanguard before the really hippie movement in the United States, but we were beginning to react against the blandness of the 50s, against the non-participation. We wanted to do something meaningful, something more, my generation did, more meaningful than what we'd emerged from in the 50s.
We put our little heads under our little desks and hoped that the nuclear bombs wouldn't get us. But we felt that now there was a time for change, and that maybe we could have something to do with that change.
The 50s had been a fairly somnolent period. Eisenhower didn't excite the younger people of this country. The McCarthy period, the country had just come out of.
But there was also something else going on, which is very important, which affected me and affected many of the people that I interacted with. The February 1st, 1960, in Greensboro, North Carolina, students sat in at a lunch counter. It started in Greensboro with four freshman students and then spread like wildfire in the South. Well, it affected us up north.
It was a bunch of courageous and brave, anonymous black folks down in the South who were farmers and students and others beginning to assert their claim on American democracy and to actually physically protest.
The The students in the South showed us what courage was, and taking control of your life, and facing the wind. Some kind of wave was building.
When it started to change, and we saw there were role models out there in these students in the South, and that there was change in the air, we wanted to be part of that too.
It was said that young people in the 50s sort of sleepwalked through the great crisis of that time, both the Civil Rights Movement and the Cold War. And there was a pent-up feeling on the part of a lot of young people that we needed this moral equivalent to both war and the Cold War.
I remember when Richard Nixon Vice President Nixon went to, I think it was Venezuela, and was spat upon. We knew, that we weren't thought of highly, and America could present itself so much better as to what it was, what its ideals were, what motivated people in this country.
It was a very disappointing period. And the spark, I think, that was the brightest burning spark for many people, including John Kennedy, was The Ugly American book.
The Ugly American came out. I read it, and it kind of reinforced some of the views that I was, that were germinating in my mind about mutual understanding and kind of elevating the level of, foreigners' views of Americans and all that.
I was aware of that kind of image that Americans had around the world, and I wanted to do something different than that.
The whole idea of the ugly American had definitely been out there, and this was a chance to just say, no, we're just regular people, and we are here. We can learn from you, and hopefully we can share something with you that will be a benefit.
There was a feeling that in the Cold War, the United States was doing a lot of things we wished it didn't have to do. Backing dictators and sending the CIA out, and a lot was going on that people didn't explicitly know about, but enough were said about to be disturbing to people who thought America had another story to tell and another way to be in the world.
And so it was in that atmosphere that Kennedy came.
I heard that Kennedy was going to be on campus that night.
I think we originally was scheduled to be here at 9:30 or 10, and it just got later and later and later and later. As the night wore on, it got colder and colder. I think one of our group went back to get coats for all of us.
And we walked down, and the crowd just kept on growing and growing and growing. Huge crowd.
There really was an expectation that this was going to be an important night. Why would 10,000 students stay out?
There were all these enthusiastic students. 2 a.m. at some jeopardy, cold, and the only thing that had a microphone, somebody would say, well, the president's car is in Ypsilanti, and we'll be here in half an hour. So we waited until he got here.
There was no announcement, but suddenly the excitement, you could hear squeals. There were people that we knew that he had arrived. He was making his way through the crowd.
I think that he just felt this is something special here, and I think that's why an idea that I think was dear to his heart. I really do think he was thinking about this for some time, but I think that's why he may have decided now's the time and place to see what happens if I throw this one out.
How many of you who are going to be doctors are willing to spend your days in Ghana, technicians or engineers?
Well, he got up there, and he had nothing planned. And he just got up there and said, how many of you are willing to serve? And he challenged us.
How many of you are willing to work in the Foreign Service and spend your lives traveling around the world?
He did start talking sort of almost stream of consciousness, talking about how wonderful it would be if we as graduating students could somehow serve our country.
And your willingness to contribute part of your life to this country, I think, will depend the answer whether a free society can compete. I think it can, and I think Americans are willing to contribute.
3 minutes, quite an impressive talk.
Nearly 10,000 students saw something in him that drew them to, on a cold night, to be there still at 1 or 1:30 in the morning when he arrived. And he was undoubtedly trying to think of, what would stir them, what would reach them. And he threw this ball out to them.
It was only, I learned later, it was only a 3-minute speech. But it was probably the most important 3 minutes of my life. It was almost as if Kennedy was talking directly to me. And when I walked back to the dorm, the short block and a half to South Quadrangle, the lights on State Street seemed brighter. There was a feeling that this was something important. And I was kind of hooked on the idea.
It was almost a preview to his then 3 month later inaugural speech of ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country, which did resonate loudly with my generation.
My wife and I were standing there on that cold January day, the inauguration of John F. Kennedy. And I remember hearing, ask not
what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
When I heard those words, I knew that I could do more than I ever had thought I could do. And I thought he had written it for me, and I thought he was looking at me when he delivered those.
I was with my parents on the east front of the Capitol on January 20th, 1961, and I heard that speech. It wasn't something I've watched on television. I remember as clear as if it were 5 minutes ago, ask not what your country can do for you. And that still resonated with me in a tremendous way. The motivation of being a part of making a difference in someone else's life was clearly my motivation in 1965.
I think one of the things that he said that captured my imagination was that he was talking about, don't sit around and think about your next large refrigerator or television set, or having the perfect, house with a white picket fence around it, but think about what you can do to bring your unique gifts into the world and what you can share with the rest of the world.
President Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. It really touched my heart because that's the way I believe, that we really need to be giving back. So when he said that, it really connected with me.
People like to be asked. People want to be asked. And they've never been asked. It's so profound. And Kennedy, if you ask somebody to do something for the country, that's the bond. He served his country. So if you can get somebody to serve, they'll be loyal to it.
To those people in the huts and villages of half the globe, struggling to break the bonds of mass misery, we pledge our best efforts to help them help themselves.
There's the legendary Peace Corps volunteer who, when asked, why did you go in the Peace Corps, said nobody had ever asked me to do anything patriotic, unselfish, or for the common good. Kennedy asked.
My children and their friends and all that, they can't understand, what it meant that, someone like Kennedy, young, articulate, and fairly inspirational, would come along and really ask us to do something for our country. And the people who really responded were those who were ready, and I was ready.
Sergeant Shriver was absolutely crucial to the beginning of the Peace Corps.
President Kennedy always said, I gave Shriver a lemon and he made lemonade.
He had a personality that really made you feel comfortable, and he made you feel that they appreciated what we were going to do. And he made us feel like it was important what we were going to do for the country.
he was giving you that sense that you were going to make such a difference and you were going to have such an impact. True or untrue, you believe that going in. And maybe others could have done it, but I don't think, not with the same level of passion that Sarge Shriver brought.
The 8 countries we visited, without exception, indicated that they would welcome the Peace Corps. And in fact, in the extent of the welcome which they gave to us and the numbers of people that they indicated that they would like to have far exceeded our highest expectations.
There were cynics in Congress who said, these kids can't go out and they'll get stomach disorders, they'll get bitten by snakes.
President Eisenhower called it a kiddie corps. Other people said you might as well send volunteers to the moon.
You send young people overseas to this sensitive part of the world, they'll screw up.
Communists will have them for breakfast. You know, you can't send idealistic, naive young people out into the world.
Nearly half of our volunteers were women. And a lot of people said, you can't send them into remote provincial areas. Sergeant Shriver said, we can send them anywhere a man is going to go. And that was very bold.
He was told he couldn't send Jewish volunteers into Arab countries. He did anyway, and there wasn't a problem. He did very, very gutsy things. I remember once one of Shriver's aides come up to him and they said, geez, with all these decisions we're making, aren't we going out on a limb? He said, a limb, nothing, we're out there walking on the leaves.
The temperature gets really high during the hot season, up to 120, sometimes hotter. It was a shock in the beginning. You're nervous, kind of scared. Coming to a country you know nothing about and then putting yourself in probably one of the most difficult situations, stressful situations, complete reversal of the culture you came from almost. So I arrived in Village day 1 and I could say hello. I can't even really explain my work that well. I could kind of say who I am, where I came from, you know, and I'm just like kind of just smiling and shaking hands. Everyone wants to greet me. I don't know what they're saying.
Quand Moussa, quand il venait Franck, mais nous on l'appelait pas Franck, on l'appelait Moussa. Au Mali, il a pris le nom de Moussa Keita.
2 years ago, I just said, like, I'm just gonna drop this all and then just go do something else. Do something else that I think should be done that nobody else really seems to be doing. And the way I see being a good person is kind of sacrificing something for someone else. So I packed up, made a decision to join the Peace Corps.
Bon, Frank Nali, akilam kumana kasi American ma, parce comme mɔgɔ caman bɛ yan o ma kalan mais ekɔliden caman bɛ an ka dugu la.
Each Peace Corps volunteer is given assigned a counterpart. A counterpart is chosen by the village to work with you. He's your liaison. My counterpart was Karfaketa. I call him Dugatigi. Dugatigi means the village chief in Bambara. That's his nickname in the village because he has the same name as his grandfather. And his grandfather was the old village chief. He's my best friend here. My best friend in the village, for sure. And I know a lot about him. He knows a lot about me.
Bon, vraiment, Moussa wagati min na a bɛna komana yan ne tun siranna kosɛbɛ parce que munna ne siranna yala a bɛna se ka yɛlɛma cogo di ani ne ka ɲɔgɔn dɔn pour que a ka dɔn k'a fɔ a bɛ balan komana a bɛ i b'a fɔ a bɛ Amérique.
Caman ba kalsem bɛ sɔrɔ nɔnɔ kɔnɔ caman bɛ nɔnɔ kɔnɔ kalsem bɛ ɲɛ kese. After spending 2 years with him, there's a lot of stuff that we've shared with one another that I don't know if he would necessarily share with his friends. He could share information with me, seek advice from me that he would be ashamed to with his friends because his friends would view that as him stepping out of his role as a male in Malian culture. And he couldn't do that. By talking to me about certain things, he's felt more comfortable. And I feel pretty good that he did that. I mean, it says a lot about our relationship, I think.
After I had graduated, I spoke to a professor and I told her I feel like I need to learn some things and mature a little, and it was that conversation that sparked. I'm like, I'm gonna apply to the Peace Corps.
The first time she told me she was gonna leave the country, I was like, oh my God, it was like a crash. What's she doing? What did I do wrong? Damn it, did I do something wrong? Question myself every day. What did I do? Why she want to leave the country?
I didn't know anything about the Peace Corps until she started talking about it.
People don't talk about the Peace Corps. They talk about the Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, but nobody talks about these.
I'm a pretty independent person, and so they're a little confused as to why I would leave my cushy life in the States for a third world cot in maybe a hut.
At the age of about 4 or 5, I can remember starting to go into foster care. My mom, had some run-ins with the law, and we were forced to go into foster care.
To take you from the beginning is difficult because Sabril is not the kind of person that tells people the hard times of her life. She doesn't. If you ask her, she will, but she doesn't volunteer this information. She makes you think that she was from just the same background I was.
I've had all kinds of foster families, and from my mom to my dad, from my dad to the shelter.
I met her when she was 12 years old. I was her teacher her 7th and 8th grade year both, so I had her for 2 years.
I was having problems in the home with my father. My father got custody of me when I was 15. I understand it's a hard age, and he just didn't know what to do with me.
And one day, she called and said, he's throwing stuff at me. And I'm like, what are we gonna do now, right? And she said, can you just come pick me up? And so I said to my husband, I said, can we just bring her home? And he said, yeah, just go ahead, bring her home. We had a house full of kids, and we brought her home.
She gave me a chance, I think. Sorry. She gave me a second chance at life, because I don't know where I would be if it wasn't for her and her husband.
She's overcame a lot of hurdles that normal people would just quit and call it good.
Sabril Holcomb is the American dream because she fought. And she graduated from an excellent university, and she's got everything now. She's made it,
My brother was the first Peace Corps volunteer to give his life in service to the ideal of what Peace Corps is created to accomplish. And that was then and remains to me very meaningful, that he just didn't die. He died in fulfillment and for something.
On the Pacific coast of South America, in Colombia, 2 corpsmen were flying in a Colombian DC-3. They were David L. Crozier of West Plains, Missouri, and Lawrence M. Radley of Chicago. They were in the first group of volunteers to be sent out. Both were 22 years old, and both had volunteered 2 years of their time. Then, for reasons still unknown, their DC-3 lost altitude, flew into the side of a mountain 4,000 feet up, and burned. An Army helicopter flew over and saw there were no survivors. It was, and still is, impossible to reach the wreckage on the ground because it is mountain and jungle.
We had all planned to go to Quibdó.
Right.
Crozier, Radley, Fiedler, and myself.
Yeah.
Fiedler and myself decided not to go to Quibdó, but to return to Medellin.
Medellin.
We all went to the airport together. Vehicle
Right.
stalled on the way to the airport. They almost missed the flight. Most of the people are on board. Crozier and Radley got on board. We waited around the air. The plane was to go to Quibdó, return to Bahia Solano, pick us up, and a load of passengers, and go on to Medellin. And we waited. The plane never returned.
As each day went by of still not finding the plane, certainly finding any survivors, my parents, and I think everyone around my parents, have gone to the inevitable, which is that my brother has been killed. And I, at 15, would get very upset, because I remember vividly people coming in through, they come in from the front door, they'd see my mother, and everyone would start crying. And I was a 15-year-old, and I would stomp out of the room, because I felt like they were crying before we knew. My brother isn't dead yet. He could be alive.
I just remember, looking over this jungle for hours and hours, and about 3 days, and that's when I guess the White House intervened and said, "Find those boys."
The plane was completely broken up. Part of it had slid down a very steep tree-covered slope.
And then I remember I get home, and before I even go in the house, my father comes out. Larry's dead. I said, well, no. He said, no. They were there. There are no survivors. Larry's dead.
And eventually a decision was made it was too dangerous to try to move anything or try to recover any bodies. The decision was made to leave everyone there, so it would be an official cemetery.
Here's a shot of the crosses that were built, one out of Coke bottles, probably from the plane. I don't think we took any in.
The one thing I remember, I'm only 15. I'm so young. I then said to myself, someday I'm going to get to this crash site, to this place where he left us, the world, this existence, because he since never came home. And I guess it's an honoring my brother, that somehow this is the last place he was, and so at least I can do is to go there, to kind of be with him.
It is extremely difficult terrain. You either have fast-flowing rivers, steep mountains, and all of it is covered with enormous tropical trees.
It's the wettest region on Earth, and those trees grow, fast down there. So.
When we began working on Gordon getting to the site, we ran into an even more dangerous problem, that the FARC, the Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias Colombianas, were very heavily involved in that area. So it was actually a military combat zone.
Because I'm not a Colombian and I don't know this area, I would not presume to know what's the right thing to do from a security perspective.
It's doable, but it's hard. It's hard. It can take, anything between 4 and 6 hours to get that small elevation of change of elevation.
Okay.
That's one thing. The other thing that is of much concern is the security thing, because there is history of guerrillas in the jungle side of Chocó and in the area. That is, you have to go. You gotta ask for permission. You don't want to be on your own in those areas. That's one thing.
Okay.
The other thing is going to the military, and ask for protection.
Check with either the paramilitary or the revolutionary or the FARC in the area, or what.
It's better not to work both sides. Not really, because you can upset people.
Timing. I mean, that brings up the idea of when to do this. If I remember, Omar was suggesting last year sometime in March. Is that still?
February, March. Actually, I think it was February.
we're going to finally have a chance to do this.
Definitely, definitely.
And I, again, can't express enough my appreciation for all the support that you and your brother have given me.
Let's try to make it happen.
I agree, as you said, and I like to hear it. It's a go project now, so
Yeah, you need to go, so.
those are magic words to me after all these years.
Early on when I first came, I'd be really nervous to dance. Just really embarrassed. I didn't know what to do. I was really nervous I would offend people because you don't have the grasp on the cultural things yet. But now after 2 years, if there's a dance, I'll get out there. I can't dance well, but I'll just do my best. A lot of volunteers, when they first start doing work, they encounter a give me kind of mentality. And a lot of the villagers have that mentality because of non-governmental agencies that come in, build things, and just give. So to kind of steer villagers away from the give me attitude, when I was working with the Women's Garden, I had them invest in it.
Nko be ako kwambe sansando be ale be keme biuro ngulabo ambe bisaba sababo wanyu wudi faranyo ngonga ka chenjan duni ke gabakuru nu duni anna ke de ke nakwana ko ni sansa.
By giving some money in it, not only do they have a sense of ownership in it, they have a sense of they're responsible for the garden. It's not a thing that's given to them that breaks in a year and then nobody has money to fix it. And nobody wants to fix it because nobody had anything invested in the first place. Now with these women, they have something invested in it because they help pay for it and help build it. And they're going to make money from this garden if they continue to work in it. Now, I didn't have them each give a huge portion of money, but a nice chunk of money that they would normally spend in a week, probably. So when the garden is falling to slight disrepair, they notice it because it's their garden. And then they come to me, oh, Musa, there's an issue over here. Let's go take care of it. I'm like, oh, sure, I'll help you. That's fine. They're not asking me to do it for them. They say, let's go together, let's do it. Because I helped them put it here, and they want to include me on part of their garden. That is also kind of a nice thing about it, too.
I want to go there and change their minds and tell them we're not lazy, obnoxious, lazy Americans. We're more than that, and I'm here to change your mind. I hope. When I have to say goodbye to my parents at the airport, I think I'll cry. I don't know. I'm gonna miss them. I don't know how long it'll be before I see my family, or if they'll get a chance to come visit me, or if something happens to my dad with his diabetes.
I've been helped out all my life. The shelter, they helped giving me a place to stay and making sure I was getting to school, and the deers have helped. I can't even like explain how much they've helped. That they've helped immensely. It's time for me to give back. It's one thing I'm really big on. I've been helped so much, so much. It's just my time to give it back.
I remember turning to my cousin Jim on the plane and saying, you know, we're here. I'm finally in Colombia.
So we arrived in Medellin, and the plan is tomorrow to be able to go to the site. All these years of preparation, organization, the whole thing.
Well, we're in the midst of some challenges. The local guy in Quibdó doesn't want to do it without more resources, and of course, we're trying to get Matamoros now to get more resources. And anyways, it's dissolving a little bit in front of us. Unless the general frees up the resources, I think we're dead in the water here.
We get the call that it's not happening. The weather, security, just did not come together.
It was crushing. It was like a dream denied, a promise unfulfilled.
So we had the opportunity to go to Armenia, where Larry was stationed. We were able to take the long drive up there.
You know, I have this photo of him standing in front of the doors, 2 wooden doors with windows on each side. Even the number 1065, I bet the numbers are still the same. And I have in the photo the number above the door.
We had the opportunity of, going into the square and actually met a couple gentlemen who knew Larry. It was, oh, the gringo with the white horse, you remember?
I had forgotten my brother bought this beautiful white horse that he remembers that he had a white horse.
He used to go around and buy, cookies and give them to the horses.
Does he remember that he was killed in the plane crash in the Choco?
¿Usted sabe que uno de ellos murió en un accidente de avión? Sí.
I mean, that was 50 years ago. So to have people still in that town remember that person, I think speaks not only to Larry, but the significance of the Peace Corps.
It was nice to run into people who knew him and did know him. And then on the ride back, there was a feeling of I had at least walked in his footsteps.
I noticed that a few select students, their eyesight was poor anyway. They were struggling in school just because they didn't have glasses. Now, I wasn't sent here to help school children with glasses necessarily, but I got my mother's youth group back home to collect used glasses and then send them to me. And then they got here and gave them to the school director to manage the distribution. He knows the kids that are struggling because of eyesight. Now, if I could help out just a couple kids, it's just a small little thing that I'm doing, but it could have a big impact.
Son apport pour le village a été très important. Parce que quand il est venu, il s'est intéressé d'abord à la population. Il a vécu comme nous les réalités du village, les réalités de la vie malienne, les réalités de la localité de notre pays, et ça c'est important. Il est difficile pour un Américain de s'adapter en un laps de temps à ces réalités. Ça, nous l'avons beaucoup apprécié.
Our role isn't just to come and do work, just to dig a well, build a garden, plant some seeds. That's not the work we do. The work is more than that. The work is integrating, so you understand your community. If you came here thinking your work was just to do work, you wouldn't achieve anything. You can't achieve anything if they don't understand you and you don't understand them.
Nous sommes très fiers de Franck, vraiment. Nous sommes très fiers de lui. Il va beaucoup manquer à notre village. Vraiment. Moi, je suis beaucoup peiné aujourd'hui. On fait tout ensemble avec lui. Mais quelle est la différence? Il n'y a pas de différence entre noir et blanc. Non. En Amérique, non, il n'y en a pas. Au Mali, c'est encore ça. Au Mali, c'est encore ça. On veut être toujours un seul peuple. Une seule communauté. Que l'on soit blanc ou noir.
I've never had this kind of experience before. I pretty much coming in, not knowing anything, really, and then just jumping into it, and just going from there and just learning how to do it, after just jumping into it, and just figuring it out. And then once you figure it out, it's awesome. I mean, once you do this, once you figure it out, you could do anything pretty much. I mean, maybe there's other things harder than this. I haven't experienced them yet. I think I'll be prepared for them though if I do.
C'est comme il est devenu un frère pour moi. Il est brave et formé. He's a brave formé. His brother is my friend, my good friend. Vraiment, il va me manquer beaucoup.
I still feel I have to get to this site. I don't know why yet. And I've never understood why.
What followed was a full day of coordinations of phone calls and emails and begging, pleading, turning every stone that we could. We have the opportunity of meeting with the Commandant General of the Army, and he is the one that we feel can say yay or nay and allow us to go.
The intent is to land at the site and then walk to where the wreckage is.
So as we're explaining to the general our plans, I mean, we were ready to hike in, we were going to hire a private helicopter, we were going to do a multiple-day river trip, we had all these different scenarios. I think once all the evidence was laid out on the table, I don't think we understood the enormity of what we were asking.
Normally when we see a very nice place to land in the middle of the jungle, you cannot use it. Because it is an attraction measure from the FARC. So normally after we land in other place and we go there to check, you will find minefields in those places.
I mean, I certainly understand what you're suggesting. We were curious before we left the United States, as I said, and that's when we were reassured that it could be done this week, and that's why.
Yeah, I don't want to promise anything that I cannot accomplish.
He says, I hear you, but from what you're telling me and from the evidence that I see, this is very involved. It's very dangerous. I'm offering you the opportunity of flying over. I will make that happen, basically. But to allow you to get on the ground and to do that, it was not going to happen.
General. Hombre, muchas gracias. Muy amables.
Thank you so much.
Gordon.
Thank you.
Que estén muy bien. Muchas gracias.
I just feel like I never would have gotten into this if I understood how much resources needed to be expended.
Hearing the same anxieties from other volunteers was like a big relief. It was nice to meet like-minded people.
I see beautiful young American kids that come with an ideal. They're willing to give a lot. They really don't know what they're going to be faced with, but they have a dream. and they go through different situations. They go from having it all to not having many things.
Peace Corps volunteers have the opportunity to represent what the American people, what we are really all about, and have the opportunity to share all of the good that is in the United States.
In these towns and these villages where you work, in the small campus where you work, you will be the United States of America. You're going to be what they remember. You're the face of America for them.
Most of you come from a background where you're used to being independent, being focused on your work, and let's get stuff done. Until you're accepted by that community, you're not going to do anything, okay? Nothing.
I'm feeling great. This still is the right choice for me right now. I'm in a house where nobody speaks any English. Bienvenida. And I feel like I'll get immersed faster into this culture.
I'll be here, my host mom's house, for 3 months. I'm trying to be like not a problem. I don't even know how to wash dishes here because there's no running water, so I have to figure that out. I'll get used to it. I have been sent to a batey in the south of the country. I will be working on an adult literacy project. Bateys are the poorest community of the entire country, and they just pop up anywhere near sugarcane fields. When I got to the Dominican Republic and I found out about bateys, like something clicked in my head and I was like, that's what I want. I feel like I could do more work in a batey. I feel like work in a batey would be a lot more fulfilling for me.
This is the place that I'm going to be living for the next 2 years, the site I've been assigned to work. Being is that I would just want to be a role model for the kids, which is why I really want to work primarily with the elementary school. But it's very challenging, especially when you're coming in to a completely different culture and you don't have a grasp on their language, and it's just different. The United States culture is just so different. I am gonna make it. I can't quit. I won't quit. You just have to be strong.
This is where we get the water, and we can only get water when there's electricity. And this is what I use to shower. They fill up a little bucket, and then I pour this out. And they've made a hole. And that's also how I brush my teeth. I'm not sure how much I'll change this community. I will certainly try. There are lots of kids, there are lots of people that don't have the opportunities that I had. So I think I owe it to some people to help them and try to help them.
When I first started to think about this trip many, many years ago, and as it evolved and attempts to get it organized were tried and failed, and it was always on the assumption, and what I always tried to feel was the best way to do this was just come in here through the help of the Garcia brothers and do it, and just go in there and reach this place without the involvement of anyone else at a higher level. And I realized I needed to have the assistance and support of the military at some level in order to make this happen. We took off in the military airplane, the Air Force airplane, and climbed out of Medellin. There was a sense of anticipation that I would be able to finally see this place, albeit from afar, above. And when we finally drew near, I was thinking, let me try and wash everything out of my mind and just focus in on my brother. And all of a sudden, it occurred to me, I have a picture of my brother. I was able to get it out, put it on the seat in front of me, and talk to him. And have him with me. I knew you're not going to see the wreckage. The wreckage is lost at this point in the undergrowth and in the trees. So at this point I felt like, well, maybe at least we can see this place where the helicopter landing pad had been built, which supposedly was a clearing in the jungle. And the inability to find it, to me, was disappointing, I suppose, at some level, but the vastness of that jungle, the beauty of the jungle, the purity of that place, in some ways, maybe it's a better place than being in some contrived graveyard in our Western world.
I think there's a big piece missing. Gordon not being able to step on the ground and actually be in that sort of sacred space. I think Gordon will try to do this trip again. I think it's unfinished business.
The Frank O'Connor leaving Mali has a bigger grasp on the world, a bigger grasp on just different cultures and different ways people live, and problems too, and the reality of life. We live such a comfortable life in the United States that we don't have to worry about a kid dying from diarrhea. But here, it's different, and you kind of get a grasp of that, and it makes you care more about things outside of what you know. When I see like people in my village that live on less than $1 a day and are delaying trips to the doctor because the doctor costs money and maybe it'll clear up in a day, it makes you feel a little ashamed about how much money we have. And I think it's just luck of the draw that I end up being in the United States.
I think it's very difficult to hate Americans if you know Americans. I don't think you could have a better vehicle, instrument for allowing the rest of the world to get to know us better, to make judgments about us better. That's why I regret so deeply we only have 2 Peace Corps programs in the entire Muslim world. And I think the absence of that in that part of the world today is in no small measure why that part of the world knows so little about us, and what little they know they don't like.
There's an old adage that if you want to buy something, all you need is money. If you want to sell something, you better speak the language of the buyer. If we want people to understand America, Peace Corps is the best investment we can make. It's the best advertisement. It's the best understanding of why people are doing the things they're doing, why cultures are different, why culture matters.
And the only thing they ever hear from America is we got bigger guns than you do and we got more money than you do. They're going to hate us. So you got to establish some other relationship with the rest of the world. And one relationship can be, we're in this together. We're going to teach you because we think it's better for the whole world if you guys have a break. And if you don't think that works with people, you haven't been paying attention to life, because that's the way things work. And they have to see Americans in some other capacity than big shot, rich tourists kicking butt, or soldiers with rifles, or they're going to hate us.
I don't think that anybody that was in the Peace Corps ever can really come back to the United States and think the same way. I think one of the great byproducts is that Americans, who have been the most privileged people in the world, who take everything for granted, realize that after living abroad in the Peace Corps situation, the way the rest of the world perceives us and the way the rest of the world perceives their life.
I remember right after 2001, 9/11, the Afghan volunteers were pulled out of Afghanistan, came here to Congress to petition Congress to get them back in. They'd lived there under the Taliban. Women had lived under Peace Corps volunteers. And the first thing they wanted to do was go back. They didn't feel threatened.
time. It's time to go home. Time to get back to my girlfriend. I'm gonna give her a little surprise. She doesn't know I'm coming home at this time. I kind of wanted to stay maybe 1 or 2 days. I couldn't. You know, 2 of my closest friends are having weddings, but they wanted me to stay, but I can't really. I gotta take off. Saying goodbye to Dukey Tico isn't bad because I'll see him again. I'll see him at the airport. He's helped me out so much. I don't know, I can never pay him. I'll tell him that tonight. Like, I can never repay you for what you've done to me. I'm gonna tell him tonight also, like, you've become part of my family. Wish I could have done more, I guess. Well, I still have a long life ahead of me. I could still do more. In Malian culture, there's an expression like, I see you to the road. I'll leave you off at the road. Dukey T's gonna see me off at the airport. It's gonna cost him $30 to get to the airport. And that $30 is a lot for someone who makes less than $1 a day. Yeah. But for him to see me off at the airport it means a lot to me. It means a lot to him too. It's kind of my closest friend in the country. 100% Malian, 100% friend. When I arrive in New York, I'll be greeted by my mom, dad, my brothers, my sister, her husband, and her 2 children that I haven't seen yet, born while I've been away for 2 years. I haven't been back to the United States in 2 years, and I'll get to see everyone that I haven't seen in so long.
I had to wait over there. I gotta say hi. How's it going, Adam? Good. How are you? Nice shirt. Thanks. What is this? How you doing, babe? You happy?
Yeah.
So am I.
In the last letter my brother writes, one of the last letters, he quotes a German philosopher, William Steckel, and he says, it's better to live humbly for a cause than to die nobly for one. Larry and David did die nobly because they lived humbly. And I think that what greater cause to give your life for than in service of peace and understanding. Being the first to give his life in Peace Corps service to these ideals, getting there, standing in that place, honors that commitment. Someone once said to me, what do you expect to find? And I remember saying, I don't know. I'm not expecting anything. I just want to get there.
When Gordon called and said we were heading back to Colombia, I think Gordon's state of mind was hopeful with a heavy dose of doubt.
I remember at one point, I even kind of gave it up. And I thought, you know, it just isn't going to happen. And I would say, okay, why am I doing this? And certainly part of that is this promise I made as a young boy that in accepting that my brother had died, I had made this exchange, this promise that someday I would get to that place where his physical presence left our earth. As a way to find him and bring him home. The plane hit like this. The top part of it hits on top of the ridge. When I began this process, I envisioned that there would be 3 or 4 people getting to a place spending some time in a meditative silence without any sense of having gotten there, any urgency to have to immediately leave, feeling the place in some sort of experiential sense. And then I realized through Omar and Napoleon Garcia, these brothers who have so held my hand all the way through and guided me through everything, that there was no way I would get there without government and military support.
There were, 4 or 5 helicopters, enormous amounts of military that were there, not counting what we had heard was 72 people on the mountain for 2 days getting things organized.
This wasn't just about bringing my brother home in some sort of symbolic way. It was about, by getting there, not flying over it, but actually standing there, it was confirming what my brother had died for. Helicopter goes around the cliff and you see the smoke rising from this little spot on top of the hill where the helicopter's supposed to land. Stepping out of the helicopter felt like the end is literally in sight.
It felt like a combination between motion, emotion, and debris.
2 Americans had given their lives in pursuit for the first time of this idea that individual American citizens volunteering 2 years of their life without pay were willing to live and work and potentially share the fate of the people they were going to serve. And it's so fundamental to who we are as a people, and it's certainly absolutely inherent in what it is to be in Peace Corps service.